Om Sri Sai Ram. My most humble pranams at Bhagwan's lotus feet, and a loving Sai Ram to all the viewers of this program. Welcome to the third edition of In Tune with Sai, our humble offering. We at the Sri Sathya Sai Seva organization Delhi-NCR bring to you the experiences of the students of Bhagwan who also had the rare opportunity to sing before Swami. It is indeed my proud privilege to introduce you to today's speaker, Brother T.S. Balaramachandran, or Brother BRC, as how we used to address him way back then when we studied at Bhagwan's lotus feet. I now welcome Brother BRC.
Sai Ram, brother.
Sai Ram, brother. Welcome to the show. Let me give a small introduction to Brother BRC. Brother BRC joined the Sri Sathya Sai Seva organization way back in 1990s when his father used to take him for bhajans. In 1994, he joined Bhagwan's Institute in the Vrindavan campus to pursue his BCom honors and completed his Masters in Financial Management in year 1999. And it was then when Bhagwan blessed him with a gold medal for his scholastic performance and overall conduct. While at Vrindavan and Prashanti Nilayam, Brother BRC was part of the Bhajan group where he had the innumerable opportunities to perform before Bhagwan. Currently, he is the member of the Sundaram Bhajan group. Brother, welcome you once again. So as I was discussing with you yesterday, the students of Bhagwan have a very unique journey, with Sai. We cannot comprehend it as a classmate or a batchmate or even a devotee sitting in line for darshans there, as to what goes on between the devotee and the Lord, the student and Swami. And I have been a lucky witness to one of the journeys and the pinings that you had when you wanted to perform before Bhagwan, and I've seen it all. If I have to ask you, after joining as Bhagwan's student, when was the first time you got an opportunity to sing before Bhagwan? Brother BRC? Over to you, Brother BRC.
Sai Ram. Sai Ram. We are facing some network issues. There is some lag apparently. Please bear with us. We'll just get back in a minute. Jai Sai Ram.
Shivaya Namah Shiva Shivaya Namah Namah Shivaya Shivaya Namah Shiva Shivaya Namah Shiva Shivaya Namah Namah Shivaya Namah Shivaya, Namah Shiva Shivaya, Namah Shivaya. Shivaya Namah Shiva Shivaya, Namah Shiva Shivaya, Namah Shivaya. Shivaya Namah Shiva Shivaya, 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 Namah Shivaya. Shivaya Namo Namah Shivaya. Shivaya Namo Namah Shivaya. Shivaya Namo Namah Shivaya. Shivaya Namah Shiva Shivaya, Namah Shiva Shivaya, Namo Namah Shivaya. Shivaya Namah Shiva Shivaya, Namah Shiva Shivaya, Namo Namah Shivaya. Shivaya Namah Shiva Shivaya, Namah Shiva Shivaya, Namah Shiva Shivaya, Namah Shiva Shivaya, Namo Namah Shivaya. Shivaya Namo Namah Shivaya. Shivaya Namo Namah Shivaya. Shivaya Namo Namah Shivaya. Shivaya Namah Shiva Shivaya, Namah Shiva Shivaya, Namo Namah Shivaya.
Hare Ram Hare Ram Krishna Hare.
We are back. Brother BRC, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now, brother. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, very clearly. Thank you so much.
So, brother,
yeah.
I guess you're asking me about my first opportunity to perform in Bhagwan's presence. Was that what you were asking? I think that's what I heard.
Yes.
Yeah, so my first opportunity to present or perform in Bhagwan's presence was, brother, very interesting. I was actually not part of the performance, but was part of the performance. And you'll remember why I'm saying this. In fact, the performance was by one of our dear classmates. You would remember his name, Balaramachandran, who used to play on the violin. We used to lovingly call him Kadu. So he was performing, and there was somebody accompanying him on the mridang. And it was Balasubramaniam who insisted that the performance was in the Sri Vrindavan. He insisted that somebody must be there with him to actually, keep the talam, So that is why I was there. So I was not part of the performance, yet part of the performance, got the opportunity to be right next to Bhagwan's Jhula in his physical proximity. So that was my first opportunity. And from there on, the craving really, built up in my heart to sing and perform in Bhagwan's presence.
I remember, brother, how you used to pine and crave for that opportunity to sing in front of Bhagwan. And today, you would like to hear some of those stories of your own journey with Sai, as to how Swami answered your prayers and gave you an opportunity to sing before him. I formally hand over to Brother BRC now. Sai Ram.
Thank you, brother. Sai Ram. Tvameva mata cha pita tvameva tvameva bandhuscha saka tvameva त्वमेव विद्या द्रविणं त्वमेव त्वमेव सर्वं मम देव देवा त्वमेव सर्वं Sri Sai Deva. Dear Swami, loving pranams at your lotus feet. Respected elders, dear brothers and sisters, Sai Ram to all of you. Grateful to Bhagwan to relive all the wonderful moments with him and the many lessons which I must say I am still learning. In fact, I noticed the flyer, the brochure which was sent for this program. It talks about two things. It talks about in tune with Sai. It also talks about learnings at the lotus feet. I'm glad it talks about learnings and not what I learned, because at this point, I'm reminded of a beautiful exchange between a guru and a disciple. So there was this disciple who walked up to the guru and said, Guruji, I have read the Bhagavad Gita, is what he said. And immediately the Guruji smiled and said, Dear child, never say that you have read the Bhagavad Gita. You must always say that you are reading the Bhagavad Gita. It's always present continuous, because the Bhagavad Gita can never be completely read, because the learnings are infinite. The same is true of what we pick up from our beloved Bhagwan. We think, or at least let me speak for myself, often I have felt that sometimes I feel that I have learned something only to figure that there's a new layer of meaning which gets unearthed, which manifests at the appropriate time in my life when I needs it. I'm a rank amateur. I'm still trying to invoke into my life the learnings that I picked up or tried to pick up at his lotus feet. There are many lenses through which I can look at my experiences with Bhagwan, but in the light of the theme in tune with Sai and that wonderful line which says learnings at the lotus feet, I felt that today I must look at it through one particular lens. And let me introduce this lens to you by sharing a wonderful experience which happened in Bhagwan's presence. This is not one of my experiences, but something which has really inspired me. It's the experience of somebody who you've definitely heard about. I'm referring to my respected lecturer, teacher, Sri Sanjay Sahani. Once when Bhagwan had been to Dharmakshetra in Bombay, Bhagwan had taken Sri Sanjay Sahani along with him. And just before Bhagwan's discourse, Sri Sanjay Sahani was given an opportunity to speak. So Sri Sanjay Sahani began his speech with a quote. And the quote was as follows. He said, prayer is man's only strength and God's only weakness. Now, remember this is being narrated in Bhagwan's presence. You're saying prayer is man's only strength and God's only weakness. Now, it's okay to say prayer is man's only strength, but imagine talking about it as God's weakness in the presence of Bhagwan himself. After Sri Sanjay Sahani shared this, I think he himself was uncertain as to whether he had quoted appropriately or have made a quote which is appropriate, because he was talking about God's weakness. He wasn't sure, what Bhagwan thought about this quote. But I believe that later on, after Bhagwan's discourse, when they were together in Anand Kutir, which is right next to Bhagwan's residence in Dharmakshetra, Bhagwan looked at Sri Sahani, smiled and said, very nice thoughts, God's weakness. Thereby admitting that prayer is man's only strength, but it is also God's only weakness. I thought I'll begin with this quote, dear brothers and sisters, because I feel that's the lens through which I should look at all the experiences or some of the experiences that I've had with Bhagwan. I think one of the biggest gifts that Bhagwan has given me is this gift of prayer, this powerful resource in the spiritual armory. And for the next hour or so, let me try and look at these experiences. Let me share these experiences through this wonderful lens of prayer. You know, even before you talk about prayer, whom do you pray to? You pray to somebody whom you believe is omnipotent, who's all powerful. And if I look at how Bhagwan introduced me to this wonderful resource called prayer in my life, I think he did that through a series of experiences. And when I was ruminating on these experiences in preparation for this satsang, I realized there's a beautiful pattern. One of the first things I think which Bhagwan did is to show us that he who is the recipient of these prayers can do anything in response to these prayers. There's nothing which is absolutely impossible for him. So this experience happened even before we had seen Bhagwan physically for the first time in our life. We had just become part of the Sri Sathya Sai organization in Kerala. Like Brother Shalabh was mentioning, my father had taken me to the Samiti in the small town called Trichur in Kerala, and I had started attending bhajans. I was towards the end of my 9th standard, just stepping into the 10th standard, when I got an opportunity to attend bhajans for the first time. So I'm talking about those early days. So around that time, my mother was diagnosed of a cyst in one of her ovary. In fact, if I remember right, the right ovary. She had had a surgery a very long time ago. Her uterus had been removed at a very young age. And on the right ovary, if I remember right, there was a cyst, which was, I think, almost the size of an orange. A scan had been done, and doctors felt that, there was medication which was given, and they felt that if through medical management, the cyst doesn't go away, then possibly we'll need a surgery. So one of those days, mother, father, I, my brother, we had gone for the Sunday bhajans in the Samiti. And while the bhajans were in progress, and if I remember right, I think the bhajan which was in progress at that time was this bhajan, Dasharatha Nandana Rama, Daya Sagara Rama. So while this bhajan was being sung, suddenly my mother experienced a great pain in her stomach. It was as though, somebody was really tugging at her stomach. The pain was so unbearable that she just couldn't move. She just couldn't speak. And after the bhajans were over, she barely had the energy to walk up. She picked up the car keys from my father and just went and sat inside the car. And for some time, she was breathless. She couldn't speak. And when we joined her in the car, she said that, there's a terrible pain in the stomach, and I don't know, what happened to me during the bhajan sessions. And while I don't remember this, my mother tells me that spontaneously I told her, saying, Amma, I think Swami has taken away your cyst. Now, I believe that's what I said spontaneously. The next day I had gone to school. Mother had gone for a checkup. They had done the scan again. And to the surprise of the doctors, they actually couldn't find the cyst. They thought that possibly, there is some problem. There's some problem with the equipment. Possibly, it's possibly the gas, and that's why they're not able to see it. The same doctors had seen the cyst a couple of days ago, a couple of weeks ago, and thus they were really, really surprised. Immediately they said, no, we must, kind of do a laparoscopy. And my mother was immediately taken to the theater. That was around the time when we were about to, visit Bhagwan for the very first time in Prashanti Nilayam. It was close to the festival of Onam, and luckily for me, I had been selected to be part of the Kerala Bhajan group, and was likely to receive an opportunity to sing a bhajan in Bhagwan's divine presence during Onam. So mother felt that if after laparoscopy a surgery was required, then she wouldn't be able to travel. Possibly the trip will get cancelled. She was concerned that I would be very disappointed, and hence was trying to dissort the doctors. Now these are all family doctors, who know us for a long time, but they assured saying, "Don't worry, we'll kind of take care. We'll make sure that we don't do a surgery." But dear brothers and sisters, they did a laparoscopy, and doctor after doctor came in, and they just couldn't believe it because they actually couldn't find the cyst. The doctor, in fact, remarked, saying it looks like a miracle because there's a scar as though the cyst has been freshly operated upon. My mother was under the influence of anesthesia, and when she came back, she said that exactly when the doctor was administering the anesthesia, in place of the doctor who administered the anesthesia, she didn't actually see the doctor, but she actually saw Bhagwan standing there in the operation theater. Bhagwan was holding on to her hand and said, "Why fear when I'm here?" So that was the very first experience. And dear brothers and sisters, remember, we had not even seen Bhagwan. We couldn't even say we were Sai devotees at that time. We had barely attended a few bhajans. We possibly did not know even how to pray him, but Bhagwan had actually showed us that there's nothing which is kind of impossible to him. And if I look back at my entire journey, that's when I think I realized that I was in the presence of somebody who could turn earth into sky and sky into earth, and who is truly, truly, truly omnipotent and who is a worthy recipient of prayers. In fact, there's an interesting sequel, a twist to this story. When I got the opportunity to actually narrate this in Bhagwan's presence in Trey Vrindavan, this experience, my mother's experience. In fact, I asked him, "Swami, can I narrate my mother's experience?" He said, "Yes, whatever you want, sir." You know what Bhagwan told me. And after I narrated this experience, I remember, Bhagwan giving a very interesting smile, which I couldn't understand. And when I came back from my vacation, I told my mother about this, saying, I don't understand. After I narrated the experience, there was an interesting smile on Bhagwan's face, and I don't understand why, is what I told her. And when I said this, my mother made a revelation which shook up the entire family. My mother confessed that prior to that experience which she had, I believe she was somebody who in fact disliked Swami. It was a real shocker to us because she never revealed it, possibly because of family pressure. She said she was a total non-believer. In fact, the only she was actually telling me that when I had gone for selections for the Kerala Bhajan group, imagine, she had actually prayed to Lord Hanuman that I should not get selection to sing in Prashantanilayam, because if that were to happen, I would have had to go to Prashantanilayam, and she would also have to go to Prashantanilayam and have Swami's darshan. And she didn't want that. Imagine a mother praying, saying, your son shouldn't get a chance. So she had actually confessed that. And she was saying that when the doctor administered anesthesia, it was at that time that unknowingly, even without she realizing, the name Sai Ram just came to her tongue spontaneously, and immediately Bhagwan appeared in the place of the anesthetist. So that was the very first experience, which showed us that here is a Lord who is worthy of all your prayers, if I may kind of use the term. So, that was the beginning. Now, moving on, one is, of course, to say that here is a Lord, who can listen to your prayers, and you can, turn earth into sky, sky into earth, who is truly omnipotent. But I think the second important lesson which Bhagwan taught me was that he really listens to us. Because see, even before you start praying, you need to have this conviction that Bhagwan can listen to you even if you are not in his physical presence. Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa says that the Lord can listen to everything he listens to even the footfall of an ant. I think I've been fortunate because I've been that ant whose footfall and heartbeat he's listened to. So let me share a few experiences from my student days, which convinced me that the Lord, our beloved Swami, can listen to our smallest heartbeat. This was, when during my student days in Brindavan, there were 2 or 3 of us who used to study together, and one of them was a classmate who had done his schooling along with me. Now, unfortunately for him, he had fallen into some kind of not so desirable company, and he had got into the habit of smoking. And he had found it difficult to give up this habit even after he joined Vrindavan. In fact, he did not want to join Bhagwan's college in Vrindavan. He purely joined because of parental pressure. So, all that rebellion and all that anger was possibly there in him. So one of those days when we were sitting in the dining hall in Vrindavan, which is also the prayer hall right next to Swami's photo in the altar, and 2 or 3 of us were there, and then we were studying during the night study hours. Now what happened at that point of time is, with a lot of bravado, he actually looked at both of us and said, "Hey, you talk about how disciplined and how strict the hostel is, but I went outside today. I went outside the ashram gate and I smoked and I came back." He said that, with a lot of evident pride. Naturally, all of us got scared. And I remember telling him, saying, "Brother, please don't do this because you're going to get caught." And immediately he said, saying that, "How will I get caught? There are so many boys, and the teachers and warden would never know." But then I told him, saying that, "Brother, the teachers may not know, the warden may not know, but then Swami would definitely know." And then I remember he told me, he said, "Okay, here's a challenge. If Swami asks me to stop smoking, then I shall stop smoking." And that's what he said. So that incident happened. It was forgotten. A few days later, we were, inside the hostel, we used to have those darshan lines and tokens, just like, the devotees would have. We would queue up on the hostel dining hall terrace in lines, and there would be tokens picked up, and we would go for darshan. Now, it so happened as a sheer divine incidence or coincidence that, me, this brother who had said that he would stop smoking if Bhagwan asked him to stop smoking, and that one more brother who was a witness to this episode, it so happened that as a sheer coincidence, all 3 of us were in the same line. It so happened that our line got picked up first. And it so happened that we landed up, almost next to each other in Trey Vrindavan, next to Bhagwan's Jula. So Bhagwan came in to Trey Vrindavan. He sat in the Jula. He spoke to all of us. And after the session, was over, the arti is taken for that day. And while the the custom generally is that one of the boys students is given an opportunity to show arti to Bhagwan, and what Bhagwan would do is that he would actually pick up the matchbox. He would light the arti himself, and generally what he would do is he would hand over the matchbox to the boy who is giving arti, because that boy can keep it with as a divine memento. But that day, what Bhagwan did was something interesting. Bhagwan lit the arti. Instead of handing over the matchbox to the boy who was supposed to do arti, Bhagwan turned towards this brother, this classmate of mine, who was, who had got into this habit of smoking, and who had said that he would stop smoking if Bhagwan asked him to. So Bhagwan just looked at this boy, threw this matchbox towards him. So this boy just caught it. And the moment this brother caught the matchbox, Swami looked at him and smiled and he said, "Hey, I have given you a matchbox, but please don't smoke." You know, the three of us were just shocked. And everybody else laughed, because everybody, including the warden, laughed because everybody thought it's a joke that Bhagwan was cracking. But the three of us were totally shocked because, dear brothers and sisters, it was just, a couple of days ago that, he had, standing in front of Bhagwan's altar, this brother had said, "Let Swami ask me to stop smoking, and I would stop smoking." So it was that experience, that first experience, it's one thing to read this in a book, but then, when you actually experience it directly, it really, really, really dawns on you that here is a Lord who actually listens to you, even if you're not in his physical presence. Let me share with you one more experience which further built this faith in me, that here is a Lord who can listen to you. Because, like I said, the prerequisite for faith in prayer is the faith that the Lord can listen to you irrespective of where you are. So this happened with one of my other brothers, and I was a witness to this. And he used to be my roommate in my first year during my BCom days. What happened is that one day this brother was, got a bout of fits, epilepsy. In fact, he had gone to the bathroom to have his shower and had not come for a long time. And then, all the brothers got worried, and then we looked for him and found that he had got fits and he was unconscious in the bathroom. So immediately he was picked up, he was given medical attention, and by Bhagwan's grace, he was kind of better. A couple of days later, when we were in Bhagwan's presence in the Trey Vrindavan, and I happened to be sitting right next to this brother, Bhagwan just leaned forward, spoke very softly in a manner in which only this brother who had got, this bout of epilepsy, this fits, and me, only both of us could listen. And Bhagwan spoke in Tamil, which is the language used in Tamil Nadu. Now, I understand Tamil. I also understand Malayalam. I understand both these languages. But this brother who had got fits was somebody who is from Kerala and understood only Malayalam. He possibly could understand a smattering of Tamil, but not much. But leaning forward, Bhagwan in Tamil he said, and I'll tell you the English translation of what he said. He said, "If you don't have money to buy medicines, should you not tell Swami? Wouldn't Swami have given you money to buy medicines?" So it just struck me that possibly this brother didn't have money to buy medicines, thus didn't buy medicines, and that's why he got fits. So immediately after the session in Trey Vrindavan, I went up to him, I confronted him, and I said, "Brother, you didn't have money to buy medicines. You didn't have medicines which were supposed to be preventive, and that is why you got fits. Is that not the truth?" And the moment I said this brother looked at me as though, I was all knowing. And he said, "Brother, how did you know?" He said, "Brother, I don't know this, but that's exactly what Bhagwan was trying to tell you in Trey Vrindavan." And he broke down and he said, "Brother, that's true. Money had not come from home. I didn't have money, and that's why I didn't buy medicine, and I felt shy to ask Bhagwan." A very moving episode, because, I was reminded again of what Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa says, that the Lord listens to everything. He listens to even the footfall of an ant. Now, here was somebody who did not even, talk about this to anybody, but the Lord's ears had picked it up. That further built conviction that here is a Lord who can listen to everything which you speak. And here is a Lord who can even listen to the unspoken, because in the first experience, he had listened to our spoken words, though he was not physically present. But I was amazed to see that here was a Lord who could even listen to words which were unspoken. Let me also add one more humorous episode. But this humorous episode shows you that the Lord even, knows what you want to pray or what you want to tell him. Now, this was a very interesting experience which was shared with me by one of my classmates. And if I remember right, this also happened during my first year BCom days. What happened was there was this brother of, the student brother of mine who was desperately trying to hand over a letter to Bhagwan. And this was, if I remember right, 1994, 1995. 1994 was Sai Kulwant Hall construction. A lot of you may remember. And Bhagwan stayed in Vrindavan for, about full 6 months, which is not common, in those days in Vrindavan. And it was almost possible. I mean, if you look at it from a probability point of view, it would look like it's kind of easy to give letters to Bhagwan. Even if you miss giving it in one session, you always should be able to give it in the other. But this brother had taken this letter to Bhagwan again and again and again for multiple darshan sessions, for multiple Trey sessions. But somehow he never was able to give this handover, this letter to Bhagwan. So this brother was telling me that one day he was very sad, and he brought his letter back to his room. He was sitting in front of his cupboard and silently praying to Bhagwan, and he was thinking, saying, Swami, if you're not accepting this letter, there's possibly something wrong with this letter. There's something wrong with what I've written in this letter. So maybe, I should review what I've written in this letter. And with these thoughts in mind, this brother decided to open and reread this letter. Now, this is not something which you generally do. Once you've written a letter to Bhagwan and you put it in the cover, you don't go back to it. But under these special circumstances, this brother felt that this is something which he must do. He felt that he should review this letter. Now, to his amazement, when he opened this letter, he found, dear brothers and sisters, that what he was carrying daily was actually not the letter which he is written to Bhagwan. By mistake, this brother was carrying his accountancy answer paper. His accountancy class test answer paper was there with him. He had written a letter to Bhagwan and kept it somewhere else in the cupboard. And by mistake, daily for darshan, he was actually carrying this accountancy answer sheet. And he said, oh my God, this is what I was carrying daily for darshan. And immediately he found the letter which he had written to Bhagwan. He put inside the cover. He took it for darshan. And that day, lo and behold, Bhagwan picked up the letter. So beautiful. When he shared this with me, I was amazed. Now, imagine Bhagwan already knows what is there inside the envelope. So slowly, I think if I have to relive these experiences and think about, silently, subtly, what these experiences taught, I think it built the conviction in me that here is a Lord who is all-powerful, who can change earth into sky and sky into earth. Here is also a Lord who listens to everything that you say, even if you utter it faintly, even though he is not in your physical presence. Here is a Lord who knows the contents of the letter even before you write it. Here is a Lord who actually even listens to the unspoken words. Here is a Lord who listens to even the footfall of an ant. And that is, I think, how slowly that conviction got built. And slowly, the faith in this powerful instrument of prayer got built. I would now like to move on to my to the experience where I think I had the first experience of the power of prayer. So now Swami can listen to you. You know that you have this comfort that Swami can, when he listens to your prayer, there's anything in the universe or anything in the cosmos that this Bhagwan can do. But if I have to look back at my first experience of experimenting with prayer, if I may use the term, I think it was this. Brother Shalab mentioned about my craving to sing in Bhagwan's presence, to be a part of the Bhajan group. In those days, what would happen is you would have to physically get up and ask for Bhagwan's permission to sing bhajans, to lead bhajans in the Mandir, to become a part of the Mandir Bhajan group in those days. So you would have to get up and ask Swami permission, saying, Swami, can I lead the bhajans in the Mandir? And Swami would have to say yes. And once Bhagwan says yes, you're permitted to sing. So that was the custom in those days. So I made my own attempt. I started praying. I started writing letters. I would get up during darshan lines. But I must say my attempts were most unsuccessful because I would get up with a letter and each time Bhagwan would avoid me. So once Bhagwan came, he looked at my letter and said, "Oh, what is this? Is this your wedding invitation?" And then, I felt very embarrassed. And imagine a first year boy, BCom boy, and Swami is asking you whether it's your wedding invitation, and there are all devotees around you looking at you and laughing. Felt very embarrassed and just sat down. The next day, I got up again with this prayer, and Bhagwan looked at the boy next to me, looked at me, and then he said, "Oh, you want an interview?" And then he looked at this boy and said, "Give this boy an interview." And again, he walked away. And this went on. After some time, I figured that Bhagwan would not even, if I attempted to give a letter, Bhagwan would not even come to that line in which I was sitting. So much so that after some time, I started becoming very unpopular with some of my classmates because they saw that if they sat next to me, Bhagwan would not even come to them. So people started avoiding, even the place where I would be sitting. And it was an extremely, extremely, extremely painful situation. And I was very disappointed. I thought I would never get this opportunity to sing in Bhagwan's presence. And one day, in that despondent mood, I was sitting in Sri Vrindavan, and Bhagwan was giving a discourse. As part of the discourse, Bhagwan narrated a Telugu poem. And the gist of the Telugu poem was this. In the poem, he said, "O mind, do not ask. If you ask, it shall be ignored. If you do not ask, it shall be granted." Now, somehow, dear brothers and sisters, I felt that this message was for me. And then I decided that, okay, Swami, from now on, I'm not going to give you this letter. Okay? I'm not going to ask. I'm just going to pray. I'm just going to pray, and then you give it to me whenever you feel like. And I started my first experimentation with prayer. I said, I'll just pray in my heart, and that's it. I'm not going to ask you, saying, "Swami, give me a chance." Okay, I'll just keep praying. I'll just keep chanting your name in my heart. And I started that experiment. And dear brothers and sisters, within just a few days of me deciding to do that, Bhagwan on his own reached out to the warden and said, "Kotta Pillalakada," he said, "where are the new boys? I would like to hear them sing." And suddenly, before I realized, I was sitting in Bhagwan's presence in Sri Vrindavan, auditioning to be a part of the Bhajan group. And I still remember the first Bhajan I sang in Bhagwan's presence for the audition was "Sai Hamara Hum Sai Ke, Aisa Prem Hamara." That was the Bhajan which I sang. So I sang that Bhajan, and within a few days, I was, part of the Bhajan group and singing my first ever Bhajan in Bhagwan's presence. And then I said, this is wonderful. This really seems to be working. This internal prayer really, really seems to be working. And then I started getting this notion that maybe, my path is the path where I should pray internally, where I should chant his name, and Bhagwan would know what I want, and he would start granting whatever he deems is best for me. So, brothers, it's not to say that writing letters is not appropriate. I think, of course, we should, because Bhagwan has mentioned in many cases that that's a great sadhana. It's okay to ask things to Swami. So, what I'm sharing with you is purely possibly what is my own path. Each one of us, I think, have a path to Swami. While our paths may be identical, I think they are never, while the paths may be similar, I think they are never identical. That way, each one of us have a unique path to Bhagwan. Slowly, I started figuring that my path is the path of internal prayer. I also started figuring slowly that possibly I would not get too much of physical attention from Bhagwan. I felt that I should seek Swami internally. I should seek Swami within. But imagine you're in Bhagwan's presence. Here is beautiful Bhagwan walking all around, speaking to everybody, blessing everybody, touching everybody. Somehow you know that Swami is listening to you. You know that Bhagwan can listen to your prayers, but he doesn't talk to you physically. So somehow you feel very bad that, you don't get physical proximity. But that's when I would say, no, it's unfair to demand Swami's physical proximity, because there are so many brothers. How can Swami be physically expected to give attention to everybody? And that's when a particular bhajan became extremely meaningful to me. A bhajan which I had been singing since my childhood days, a bhajan called Antaranga Sai, Anathanatha Sai. Antaranga Sai means the Lord within. That bhajan became suddenly meaningful because I realized, for me, the Swami I should seek is not the Swami outside. Maybe the Swami outside physically is not for me. I would have to search for the Swami within. And the Swami inside me will speak to me. I realized that while I can't be possessive about the Swami who is outside, I can be very possessive about the Bhagwan who's inside, because the Bhagwan who's inside belongs to me only. And everybody has their own Bhagwan. So it's okay to be possessive about that Bhagwan inside me. There were many days where I would go to the hostel terrace, silently to one corner, sing this bhajan, and break into tears. Because I grew up in a family which was a joint family. I was the first grandchild, totally pampered, lot of affection. I was the first person from the family to even step out to the town to study. There's nobody who had even gone out. I was missing home. I was missing my parents. But I believed that all that love and more I would get from Bhagwan. But here was Bhagwan not talking to me physically, not looking at me physically. I was not receiving his loving caress. And then the bhajan, Antaranga Sai, became a source of solace in that scorching heat where I was not facing Bhagwan's presence. So let me sing that bhajan now again in remembrance of those days. Antaranga Sai, Anathanatha Sai, Antaranga Sai, Anathanatha Sai, Deenabandhu Sai, Karuna Sindhu Sai, Deenabandhu Sai, Karuna Sindhu Sai, Antaranga Sai, Anathanatha Sai, Rama Krishna Shiva Shakti Prema Rupa Sai, Rama Krishna Shiva Shakti Prema Rupa Sai, Yugavatar Baba Sri Sathya Sai, Yugavatar Baba Sri Sathya Sai, Antaranga Sai, Anathanatha Sai. So I would sing this bhajan and break into tears because I felt that the only Swami I could crave was a Swami within. I felt that I would never receive the attention of Swami physically. Slowly I resigned to that fact and started accepting it. But I remember one day, it was Vijayadashami, the day when Rama won the war against Ravana, the day when he was victorious, the day when we worshipped the Divine Mother. I remember a very famous musician, Sri P. Sushilama, was actually performing in Bhagwan's presence in Sai Ram Hall. And I was sitting in the audience. Bhagwan was seated in our midst. In fact, he was not on the dais. He was actually sitting along with the boys in the Sai Ram Hall. I was somewhere, kind of far away from where Bhagwan was seated. And by then I'd accepted that I would never get Swami's physical touch. Swami would not look at me. Swami would not smile at me. But the Swami inside, the Antaranga Sai, is mine. And I had accepted that fact. But dear brothers and sisters, that day somehow I felt extremely bad. I felt, Swami, it's so unfair. Forget everything. At least once in my life, can you not just kind of, bless me by placing your divine hands on my head? Do I not deserve at least one caress from you? And then I started telling myself, saying, no, it's unfair. You should not put these demands on Swami. There are so many boys. You should not inconvenience them. So one part of my heart was saying this, but the other part of the heart was saying, no, Swami, I really miss this. And again broke down into tears. And then there was this huge craving which came out in the form of a prayer. Still remember, the bhajans got over, and Bhagwan was walking towards the dais to bless the performers. And randomly what Bhagwan did is to cut a path, like he would do. There was this assigned path where they put the carpet, but Bhagwan didn't pick that path. He randomly picked up a path and started walking along the path. Now, as Bhagwan came closer, I suddenly realized that I was on the edge of a path. So me, who was sitting far away from Bhagwan, because Bhagwan had randomly cut that path, I was exactly, right next to Bhagwan. And as Bhagwan neared the place where I was sitting, what he started doing is, he started placing his hands over the head, the hands of the boys, as though he was, holding their hands to balance himself, while that was actually not required. But Bhagwan, kind of started doing that. And as he came closer towards me, and exactly as he passed me, he placed his hand on my head for some time, really, kind of pressed it, blessed me, and just walked on. And I was in tears of bliss. I just can't forget that beautiful moment, because the prayer had just come into my mind, and the Lord had listened to it, and the Lord had responded immediately. And that's when I think, dear brothers, for the first time in my life, the conviction got built in my heart that prayer is such a powerful tool that if you really pray with your heart, Bhagwan would respond, because it showed me that he is all powerful. It showed me that he can listen to us. Now, all that was required is to pray with all your heart. And I realized that what fuels prayer is strong craving. And that's what this experience taught me that day. And Bhagwan added further to this through one more experience, which I will now come to. Each one of us go through this difficult period in Bhagwan's presence. Let me not say each one of us, a lot of us possibly go through this difficult period, which I would refer to as a cold storage period. Now, what's a cold storage period? A cold storage period is a period where you don't get opportunities, where Bhagwan is not talking to you. So this was the period when I was in my first year post-graduation MFM in the Prashant Nilayam campus. Suddenly one day I realized that my name was not there in the Bhajan list for the day. But there are a lot of singers there, so I possibly felt that I would get my opportunity the next day. The next day, what happened is that again my name wasn't there. Then I said, this is something strange. I realized the next day also it wasn't there, and then I realized something was seriously wrong. But then nobody would tell me what is wrong. Now, I didn't have the courage to ask anybody as to why my name wasn't part of the Bhajan list. Nobody was telling me, but one brother walked up to me and said, see, BRC, I think Bhagwan has made some comment on your voice. And because Bhagwan has made some comment on your voice, what has happened is that's why you're not getting this opportunity to sing. Now, the problem is, if I have to get back to this opportunity to sing, Bhagwan has to again speak about me and has to give me permission. And that, in my scheme of things, was not difficult, because I was not a person to whom Bhagwan would physically talk very often, because like I said, my path was the internal path. And again, I was back to my old days when I had lost this golden opportunity to sing in Bhagwan's presence. And I really started craving again for the opportunity to get back this opportunity. One of the senior brothers walked up to me and he asked me, saying, brother, Bhagwan has not been giving you a chance to sing. So what are you doing? I said, sir, brother, I'm praying hard. But, that brother told me, saying, did you write a letter to Swami? Now, brothers, from the past experiences I narrated, you know that somehow the path of giving letters never worked out for me. While it's a powerful path, it didn't work out for me. You remember, for me, the internal path had worked. Okay, so I said, sir, brother, I'm praying. But somehow the brother said, it is not enough if you just pray, you have to write a letter. Now here I was, as it is in a difficult situation, and to complicate issues, my basics were also being shaken, because this brother was actually telling me that only letter writing will work, and then prayers don't work. Internal praying doesn't work. I mean, that's how I had understood their advice, and I was in a deep spiritual crisis because my fundamentals had been shaken. A few days passed. It was Bhagwan's birthday. It was the time of the global Akhanda Bhajan. It was the first evening. I was seated somewhere in the middle of the Bhajan hall. In those days, Bhajans used to happen inside the Prashanti Mandir. The Bhajan hall, not in the Sai Kulwant hall. All of us were waiting for Bhagwan to come in and light the Akhanda Jyoti and for the Bhajans to begin. I was somewhere in the middle of the hall because I had absolutely no chance to sing that day. My name was not there in the list. The Bhajans began. The first half an hour or 45 minutes of Bhajans got over. Bhagwan got up from the throne, and he was retiring for the day. He was walking towards Purna Chandra, where Swami would reside in those days. And just when Swami had left the Bhajan hall, but Swami was still walking towards Purna Chandra, I thought that one of the senior brothers looked at me and beckoned to me, asked me to come forward. Now, I was delighted. I mean, I thought I was being given an opportunity to sing. So I got up and then hesitantly walked towards the front rows. Now, brothers, the interesting thing is, later on, I came to know that actually I was not being called. I believe the brother sitting next to me was being called. I had mistaken that I was being called. But, this senior brother who would call me, thought, saying that, okay, he's coming, so he may feel bad if I, ask him to go back. And anyway, Bhagwan is now not on the, on the throne, so you could, take the risk of making him sing. And I believe that's how, I had got the opportunity to sing. So when I was asked what bhajan I would like to sing, the only bhajan I could think of in that situation was, "Oh Bhagwan, Arij suno mere Sai Bhagwan." Because Swami was still within hearing shot. I felt this was my last straw. I thought that I had to put all my heart and soul into this, because Bhagwan had to listen to this bhajan. Bhagwan had to, his heart had to melt. That was the only way I would get my opportunity again to sing. So that was the bhajan I sang on that occasion. Dear brothers and sisters, let us now all sing that bhajan together.
O Bhagwan, Paraj suno mere Sai Bhagwan. 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 Partipuri ke tum ho दाता, 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 Vrindavan ke तुम हो दाता, वृंदावन के तुम हो दाता, वृंदावन के तुम हो दाता, वृंदावन के तुम हो दाता, सब भक्तों के मन को माता, सब भक्तों के मन को माता, सब भक्तों के मन को माता,
सब भक्तों के मन को माता।
पार उतारो नैया मोरी,
पार उतारो नैया मोरी,
पार उतारो नैया मोरी,
पार उतारो नैया मोरी।
साई घनश्यामा, साई घनश्यामा,
साई घनश्यामा, साई घनश्यामा।
ओ मेरे साई घनश्यामा, साई घनश्यामा,
साई घनश्यामा, साई घनश्यामा।
ओ भगवान, ओ भगवान, परज सुनो मेरे साई भगवान।
ओ भगवान, ओ भगवान, अर्ज सुनो मेरे साई भगवान।
परतीपुरी के तुम हो दाता,
परतीपुरी के तुम हो दाता,
वृंदावन के तुम हो दाता,
वृंदावन के तुम हो दाता।
सब भक्तों के मन को माता,
सब भक्तों के मन को माता।
पार उतारो नैया मोरी,
पार उतारो नैया मोरी।
साई घनश्यामा, साई घनश्यामा,
साई घनश्यामा, साई घनश्यामा।
ओ मेरे साई घनश्यामा, साई घनश्यामा,
साई घनश्यामा, साई घनश्यामा।
ओ भगवान, ओ भगवान, अर्ज सुनो मेरे साई भगवान।
So that was the bhajan which was sung that day. And dear brothers and sisters, I don't think I have ever managed to sing any bhajan in my life with the feeling and craving that I felt that day, because I was really, really in trouble that day, and I needed Bhagwan to listen to me. I needed his grace. I desperately wanted to be back. So what happened is, it was only a question of who would bell the cat, who would give me the first chance, risking giving a chance to somebody who was, who had been removed from the list because Bhagwan had said something about his voice. So since one brother had taken the risk, others started, just giving me chances. So it was the next day of Akhanda Bhajan. I had started getting chances to sing, but Bhagwan was not seated on his throne. Bhagwan was outside. He possibly was listening to me, but then he was not there on the throne. So it must have been around 10 or 11 in the morning, and Bhagwan's car had arrived inside Sai Kulwant Hall because Bhagwan was preparing to go to the college auditorium, the institute auditorium, where the brothers were practicing for the drama which was to be put up during Bhagwan's birthday, and Bhagwan was going there to watch the rehearsal. So Bhagwan's car was ready and waiting. I was, I had got my opportunity to sing the next bhajan. The mic was in front of me, and exactly when I was starting to sing that bhajan, the interview room door opened, and for those of you who remember Prashanti Mandir, interview room door, and right next to that is the bhajan hall door. Swami just walked out of the interview room door. Coinciding with that was the beginning of the bhajan which I was singing. And exactly when I started singing, the merciful Lord, what he did is, he was walking towards the car, but then the moment I started singing, he stopped, he put a certain brake on the path. Bhagwan made it very obvious. He stopped, he turned, and he walked inside the bhajan hall and sat on the chair. Now, my monkey mind was thinking, oh my God, now Swami is seeing me singing. Now Swami is going to again, ask people to remove you from the list. But here is the merciful Lord who has come in. But, that's how the monkey mind thinks. And I was, I had to sing now in Bhagwan's presence. And I sang my next bhajan. And most appropriately, that bhajan which I sang that day by His Divine Will was Sankata Harana, Sri Sai Ramana. Let us all listen to that bhajan now.
संकटहरणा श्री साई रमणा
संकटहरणा श्री साई रमणा
संकटहरणा श्री साई रमणा
संकटहरणा श्री साई रमणा
पंकज चरणा नमो नमो
पंकज चरणा नमो नमो
पंकज चरणा नमो नमो
पंकज चरणा नमो नमो
वेदोद्धरणा वेंकटरमणा
वेदोद्धरणा वेंकटरमणा
वेदोद्धरणा वेंकटरमणा
वेदोद्धरणा वेंकटरमणा
लक्ष्मीनारायण नमो नमो
लक्ष्मीनारायण नमो नमो
साई नारायण नमो नमो
साई नारायण नमो नमो
नमो नमो नमो नमो
नमो नमो नमो नमो
नमो नमो नमो नमो
नमो नमो नमो
पंकज चरणा नमो नमो
पंकज चरणा नमो नमो
पंकज चरणा नमो नमो
पंकज चरणा नमो नमो
संकटहरणा श्री साई रमणा
संकटहरणा श्री साई रमणा
पंकज चरणा नमो नमो
पंकज चरणा नमो नमो
वेदोद्धरणा वेंकटरमणा
वेदोद्धरणा वेंकटरमणा
लक्ष्मीनारायण नमो नमो
लक्ष्मीनारायण नमो नमो
साई नारायण नमो नमो
साई नारायण नमो नमो
नमो नमो नमो नमो
नमो नमो नमो नमो
नमो नमो नमो नमो
नमो नमो नमो
पंकज चरणा नमो नमो
पंकज चरणा नमो नमो
संकटहरणा श्री साई रमणा
As I listen to this, the sight of Bhagwan seated on the throne that day is etched in my mind. Bhagwan was all smiles, full of compassion, swaying joyfully from side to side. It was a sight for the gods to see. And the mercy of the Lord is such that what he did is immediately after this bhajan got over, he looked at me and gave me a dazzling smile and just walked away and got into the car as though to tell me that I came inside only for your bhajan. I mean, what to speak about the mercy of the Lord? So, I was thinking that Swami has seen me sing bhajans and I will not get the opportunity again because I may be removed from the list. But to my surprise, dear brothers and sisters, in the evening session when I came back, I found my name on the top of the list. I was part of the concluding session and I was surprised delightfully. That's when one of the brothers came running up to me, one of my classmates came running up to me and shared with me what had actually happened when Bhagwan went to the Institute auditorium. I believe that Bhagwan had gone to the auditorium, and in the auditorium he had suddenly brought up a conversation on the previous day's bhajans. And during the previous day's bhajan session, I believe Bhagwan had noticed that there were some brothers who were preparing, for the next bhajan. So while the previous bhajan was in progress, they were preparing for the shruti of the next bhajan by, placing their ears next to the harmonium. And I think Bhagwan was displeased with that, and Bhagwan was commenting on that. And while commenting on that, Bhagwan suddenly said, see, you boys are getting chance to sing, and during bhajans, instead of following the bhajans which are going on, you are preparing, for the next bhajan. That's very bad. And then suddenly, out of the blue, Swami refers to me. Now, how does he refer to me? In those days, Bhagwan would refer to me as parrot voice, possibly because I had a squeaky, voice. So Swami says, this parrot voice, referring to me, Swami says, this parrot voice, he has written a letter to me. And after that, Swami revealed to all the boys seated there the content of the letter I had written. Swami said that parrot voice has written a letter to me saying, Swami, please give me a chance to sing, Swami. I'm not getting a chance now and I want a chance again, Swami. And Swami says in the letter he's written, Swami, even if you don't give me a harmonium, there's no problem, Swami. I will sing without a harmonium. Just give me a chance to sing. See, that is what he's written. And see, you're getting the chance and you don't know the value. Or something like that is what Swami had said. And that is how my name was back in the list, because Bhagwan had spoken about me favorably. Now, dear brothers and sisters, I'll tell you the most beautiful part of it. What did Bhagwan say? Bhagwan went and told all the boys there that I wrote a letter. Let me tell you, in reality, I never wrote a letter. Because, for me, that was not my path. My path was to pray internally. Writing a letter is a valid sadhana, is a very powerful sadhana, but that wasn't my path. That is not what had worked for me earlier. I had only prayed. Internally, but Bhagwan said that I wrote a letter, thereby showing me that praying internally, as far as I was concerned, was equal to writing a letter. But the most beautiful thing is, the brother who had advised me to write a letter was there in the audience in the auditorium. He thought that taking his advice, I had written the letter. So he was confirmed in his faith, I was confirmed in mine. Who else other than our beloved Bhagwan can do this? And that's when, dear brothers, I saw the manifestation, the strong power of prayer. And all throughout this episode, typically Antaranga Sai, my path, Bhagwan never spoke to me but spoke about me. So that was the path. So let me conclude with one final episode where, through which Bhagwan taught me a lesson which I am still struggling to learn. When I got once an opportunity to speak in Bhagwan's presence, when I fell at his feet after the speech, when you're in touch with the Lord and when you're in the presence of the Lord, you feel so full, and you somehow his divinity rubs on to you. You realize you're a spark of God. You feel so pure that there's nothing you feel like asking. So I remember asking Swami, saying, Swami, let us be devoted to you throughout your life. And I believe Bhagwan, in a response to that prayer, taught me a lesson which I'm still, I would say, trying to learn, which I'm still struggling to learn, I would say. So this was a beautiful experience in a dream. This is one of the clearest dreams of Bhagwan I've ever seen. In fact, I would describe it as a HD quality dream, if I may use that term. It was so clear. It was so clear and so real. So in this dream, I see myself along with Bhagwan in the interview room in Prashantinilaya. Bhagwan is seated on the chair and I am seated on the floor. I work for a financial institution, a bank. So Bhagwan is looking at me and Bhagwan asks me, so where are you working? I said, Swami, I work for a bank. And very sweetly, Bhagwan asks me, so what do you do in a bank? And then, very sweetly showing his hand as though it's some, as though it's a ledger. He writes, with his hand and says, do you write accounts and all that? Is that what you do? So I tell him, no, Swami, I'm a manager. I'm a branch manager. I was a branch manager in those days. And with evident pride on his face, Swami says, oh, you're a branch manager. And then Swami says, okay, good. And suddenly Swami switches subject and Swami said, you sing, right? I says, yes, Swami, I sing. And says, okay, so sing. And immediately in the dream, I see Swami get off his chair and I see Swami in a pose which I've never seen him before. He squats on the floor. I still wonder how Swami managed to do that with his robe and all that. He just squatted on the floor right, next to me, right in front of me. And suddenly from nowhere, he surprises me by pulling in a harmonium. These are things I'm seeing clearly in the dream. And then Swami is asking me, what do you want to sing? So I don't know why, brothers, but brothers and sisters, at that point of time, I told Swami in the dream, saying, Swami, I want to sing a song which we used to sing in those days. It's an old Hindi song, but we would sing a modified version of it in Bhagwan's presence. The song is Teri Hai Zameen, Tera Asma. So I said, Swami, I'll sing this. Swami said, okay, good, sing. And I still remember Swami on the harmonium plays the lead. Na 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 na. And then I start singing. Teri hai zameen, tera asmaan, tu bada mehirban, tu bakshish kar, sabhi ka hai tu, sabhi tere, khuda mere tu bakshish kar. So I sing this and then Swami is playing the harmonium along with me. And I still remember in the dream, after the zero stanza, Teri hai zameen tera asman, the next stanza is Teri marzi se malik, hum is duniya mein aaye hai. But for some strange reason in the dream, I don't sing that stanza and I directly skip the stanza and go to the last stanza. And the last stanza is Tu chahe to hame mare, tu chahe to hame rakhe, tere hi haath se sai, hamare bhag hai likhe. Tu chahe to hame mare, tu chahe to hame rakhe. Swami, if you wish to, you can hit me. If you wish to, you caress me. But whatever you do, Swami, whether it's pain, whether it's pleasure, may the script of my life be written with your own divine hands. And I remember, dear distinctly, brothers and sisters, what happened is exactly when that, still then Swami was just playing the harmonium, but exactly when we got to the lines, Tu chahe to hame mare, tu chahe to hame rakhe, Swami started swaying from side to side and singing these lines along with me. Tu chahe to hame mare, tu chahe to hame rakhe, tere hi haath se sai, hamare bhag hai likhe. As though to underline these lines for me, as though, I should take notice of those lines, as though the message meant for me was there in those lines. And immediately after that stanza got over, the rendition stopped. Swami just got up. Swami said, very good, very good, very good. And then he materialized Vibhuti. He said, open your mouth. And now Swami had a very serious expression on his face. And I opened my mouth. And then Swami is, kind of dropping the Vibhuti from there. So the angle at which I was sitting, I could see the Vibhuti, falling into my mouth. And I still noticed distinctly there were some golden crystals which were part of that vibhuti. The vibhuti just landed on my tongue. There are various kinds of vibhuti I've tasted. Once I remember when I got fever, Swami gave me vibhuti which tasted, I thought, like paracetamol. But this vibhuti tasted sweet. And suddenly at that point of time, my dream broke. I woke up. It was around Brahma Muhurtam. It was early in the morning. And I woke up. My wife was, sleeping. I woke her up and I said, I saw Swami. I saw Swami. And the most unbelievable thing, brothers, which I can't still fathom today, is even after I woke up, for a few brief moments, that sweetness of the vibhuti lingered in my tongue. I just can't explain this. I don't know how, it was as though the dividing line between the Jagra and the Swapna, the sleeping state, the dream state and the waking state had been completely removed. After this dream happened, I went through the toughest, most difficult patch in my career. Something extremely difficult. But when I went through this difficulty, suddenly this line would come back to me. Tu chahe to hame mare, tu chahe to hame rakhe, tere hi haath se sai, hamare bhag hai likhe. The line would come back to me as though to tell me that irrespective of whether it's pain or pleasure that I go through, I must remember that it is written with his own hands. Because I had prayed to Swami saying, Swami, let me be devoted to you. And Swami's definition of devotion is that we remain equanimous irrespective of pain or pleasure through all the opposites of life. So possibly that was a message I thought Bhagavan was trying to teach me. And dear brothers and sisters, to cut a long story short, it became a pattern in my life after that. Every time I have to go through a tough, turbulent period in my life, out of this blue, this song would appear. It once appeared in the form of a particular practice session of this song in the Vrindavan campus, which was miraculously, mysteriously kept waiting till such time I landed in the campus for some work. And everybody was surprised because that day they were actually playing my, version or my rendition of this experience. And I was there in Vrindavan campus to listen to this. Immediately after that was a turbulent patch. After some time, I started getting scared when I listened to this bhajan. But then I realized I was being stupid. I realized that Bhagavan in his mercy was actually telling me, like a pilot would say, passengers, we are going through a rough patch, but don't worry, you're safe in my hands. It was like the merciful Lord was telling me, Bangaru, don't worry, you're going to go through a tough patch, but I'm there with you. Tu chahe to hame mare, tu chahe to hame rakhe, tere hi haath se sai, hamare baag hai likhe. And that was the message I thought Bhagavan was trying to teach me through those experiences. And every time I have to go through a tough patch, even a few days ago, the song resurfaced again. But then it's like Bhagavan telling you, don't worry, I'm there with you, irrespective of what trouble you go through. Let me conclude with a very small point. Sometimes we feel that till I came to Bhagavan, there were no problems, but the moment you come to Bhagavan, troubles increase. I mean, I don't know whether people have experienced this, but there are some people who say this, till I came to Bhagavan, there was absolutely no problem. But then suddenly after I came to Bhagavan, troubles have started. But I met a devotee in Chennai who gave a beautiful perspective to this. He said that once he got the same doubt when he used to work in South Africa, just before he joined the Sai organization, he noticed that somehow people's troubles seemed to be multiplying after they came to Bhagavan. And thus, hesitantly, he approached one of the senior devotees in the Sai organization in Africa and asked him, saying, Sir, is it true that if we come to Bhagavan, our troubles will increase? And the senior Sai devotee smiled and said, brother, that's not the way to look at it. The truth is this. It is not that because you've come to Bhagavan, troubles have come to you or your troubles have increased. It is because troubles are going to enter your life, Bhagavan has come into your life so that he can safely take you through this troubled path. And that's when I understood the significance of this beautiful message Bhagavan had given in response to my own prayer to help me build devotion towards the lotus feet. With this, I offer everything that I have said, right, wrong, at Bhagwan's lotus feet. Pardon me for whatever I may have said in my ignorance, but whatever I have said, Swami, I offer at your lotus feet. Swami, once again, let me conclude this satsang by offering this beautiful prayer, Teri hai zameen, tera asma, at your lotus feet. Jai Sai Ram.
तेरी है जमीन तेरा आसमान, तू बड़ा मेहरबान, तू बख्शिश कर सभी का है तू, सभी तेरे खुदा मेरे, तू बख्शिश कर। तेरी है जमीन तेरा आसमान, तू बड़ा मेहरबान, तू बख्शिश कर सभी का है तू, सभी तेरे खुदा मेरे, तो बख्शिश कर। तेरी है जमीन तेरा आसमान, तू बड़ा मेहरबान, तू बख्शिश कर सभी का है तू, सभी तेरे खुदा मेरे, तो बख्शिश कर। तू चाहे तो हमें मारे, तू चाहे तो हमें रखे, तेरे ही हाथ से साई हमारे भाग है लिखे। ये जिस्म और जान तेरे है, ये सब अरमान तेरे है। तेरी है जमीन तेरा आसमान, तू बड़ा मेहरबान, तू बख्शिश कर सभी का है तू, सभी तेरे खुदा मेरे, तो बख्शिश कर। तेरी मर्जी से है मालिक हम इस दुनिया में आए, तेरी रहमत से है मालिक। तेरी रहमत से है मालिक, ये जिस्म और जान पाए है। तुम अपनी नजर हम पर रखना, किस हाल में है कबर रखना। तेरी है जमीन तेरा आसमान, तू बड़ा मेहरबान, तू बख्शिश कर सभी का है तू, सभी तेरे खुदा मेरे, तो बख्शिश कर। तेरी है जमीन तेरा आसमान, तू बड़ा मेहरबान, तू बख्शिश कर सभी का है तू, सभी तेरे खुदा मेरे, तो बख्शिश कर। तेरी है जमीन तेरा आसमान, तू बड़ा मेहरबान, तू बख्शिश कर सभी का है तू, सभी तेरे खुदा मेरे, तो बख्शिश कर।
Humble pranams at Bhagwan's lotus feet. A very loving Sai Ram to all my brothers and sisters out there. I would like to share few of Swami's words with all of you that I came across very recently. Swami says, all my students are gold. Neither do they leave me, nor can I stay without them. He says, only I know their feelings, no one else. Bhagwan goes on to say, I have no other place to live. Students, your heart is verily my home. I and you are one. Brothers and sisters, and that truly explains why we feel the way we feel when we have these beautiful in tune with Sai sessions. We feel charged. We feel Swami's presence all around us, his bliss, his love, his assurance. And why not? Swami has specifically said that he lives in his students' hearts. How blessed are we, Bhagwan? How kind are you that in these chaotic, challenging times, you are reaching out to us through these divine chosen instruments of yours, Swami. Thank you so much. You know, I know that our salutations and our obeisance to first and foremost our Bhagwan, who, through these beautiful channels and messengers, he is touching each one of us and he's reassuring each one of us that he's there, he's there. Shat Koti Naman Swami. And Brother Bala, I have no words. I'm so emotional at this point. Beautiful experiences, yes, you have shared with us. And the learnings, our learnings are so, they are as though they are for each one of us. And they were yours, but today through you, they have reached to each one of us. It is a guidance, these are instructions for all of us who are viewing this, who are hearing this. He has assured us through you again today that whether we can see him or not, he's listening to each and every prayer, even the unspoken, the thoughts which are still there in our minds. He's right there listening. So all we need to do is hold on to his feet, and pray as sincerely as you were doing, you are doing. And then he's right there to bless us at the right moment. Thank you so much for such a beautiful session. For so many days, we are going to be guided by all your experiences and all the learnings. And it is all there for us to sit, meditate on, and introspect. Thank you. Thank you so much for taking out the time and sharing with us these beautiful experiences, this beautiful journey of yours with Swami. Thank you, Bhaiya. Thank you so much.
Sai Ram, sister, grateful to Bhagwan for the opportunity.
Yes. And for our next session, brothers and sisters, all viewers, we will have to wait. It will be in October again with Swami's blessings. We will have another session of In Tune with Sai in October. Till then, do stay connected with us. You all know that we have our regular Sunday Bhajan and many other online programs on the same YouTube channel. So stay safe, stay happy, keep praying. Jai Sai Ram. We will have the Mangal Aarti now.
Om Jai Jagadish Hari Swami Sathya Sai Hari Bhaktajana Samdharshaka Bhaktajana Samdharshaka Bhakti Maheshwara Om Jai Jagadish Hari Shivadana Sri Jana Seva Pranapati Swami Sarva Pranapati Ashrita Kalpaladika Ashrita Kalpaladika Avartana Om Jai Jagadish Hari Mata Pita Guru Deva Mariyantayunire Swami Mariyantayunire Nada Brahma Jagannath Nada Brahma Jagannath Nagendra Sayana Om Jai Jagadish नारायण नारायण सत्यनारायण नारायण सत्यनारायण नारायण ओम जय सद्गुरुदेवा नारायण नारायण ओम सत्यनारायण नारायण 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 ओम सत्यनारायण नारायण जय सद्गुरुदेवा शांति 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 समस्त लोका सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्त लोका सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्त लोका सुखिनो भवन्तु शांति 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 जय बोलो भगवान श्री सत्य साई बाबा जी की जय।
परमं पवित्रं बाबा विभूतिं परमं विचित्रं लीला विभूतिं परमार्थइष्टार्थमोक्षप्रदानं बाबा विभूतिं इदमाश्रयामि परमं पवित्रं बाबा विभूतिं परमं विचित्रं लीला विभूतिं परमार्थइष्टार्थमोक्षप्रदानं बाबा विभूतिं इदमाश्रयामि परमं पवित्रं बाबा विभूतिं परमं विचित्रं लीला विभूतिं परमार्थइष्टार्थमोक्षप्रदानं बाबा विभूतिं इदमाश्रयामि।
ॐ साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वः प्रचोदयात्। 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 ॐ साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वप्रचोदयात्। ॐ साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वप्रचोदयात्। ॐ साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वप्रचोदयात्। ॐ साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वप्रचोदयात्।